Hello everyone, what's up? It's me again, Youngmaster3, and what do you know? It's time for a new video, and it's gonna be one of those franchise ranking videos where I pretty much talk about horror franchises uh, and ranking them based on how much I like them or how much I don't like them. So today's video is gonna be a ranking video of all the Howling films. I've seen all of them, and I'm gonna go through them like with the starting with the worst and then work my way up to the best ones. Uh, and the first one, which is at number 8, which means the last place in the series, which is my least favorite, is Howling 7 or Howling New Moon Rising from 1995. Now, this one is, I have to say, has to be one of the worst horror sequels I've ever seen. Because most of the time, there's barely any werewolves in it, and it just feels like it seems like a vanity project gone wrong, because the director of this is also one of the main characters in the film, and most of the film just takes place in this like small little town village with a bunch of rednecks singing and dancing to country music all over the place. What little action or horror that is there is actually some flashback footage to part 4 and part 5, which is just straightforward lazy. So I mean, unless you want to say that you've seen all of the Howling films in the series and whatnot, so I mean, watch it. But if you don't want to see that, I mean, I would say avoid this at all costs, unless you're a die-hard fan of the Howling series and you just really need to have watched all of them. Howling New Moon Rising at number 8. At number 7, we have another one which I don't have in the collection. This one is the latest one in the series, Howling Reborn, 2011. Oh my god, I hated this. I mean, the thing is, I can totally see some people considering this to be a little bit higher on the list, but the thing that really made me angry about this one was that it felt more like a Twilight film than a Howling film. And I would say it looks extremely ugly as well. It's really poorly lit, and some of the CG is just absolutely horrendous. And none of the characters are likable or anything. Everyone is just bland and lifeless, and some of the dialogue is just cringe-worthy as well. So, Howling Reborn, really awful film. I mean, just slightly better than Howling New Moon Rising, because there are actually some interesting werewolf bits towards the end of the film, but at that point I'm already like tired and bored to death. So yeah, Howling Reborn at number 7. At number 6 we have Howling 4, the original Nightmare, I think it's called. The reason why this is called the original Nightmare is because apparently this is more true to the original story or whatever that the first one was based on than the first one. Um, but overall, this is kind of a boring film in general. I really like the few blood and gore effects that are seen in this one is really great. The soundtrack is pretty soothing as well. But overall, the pacing of the film is really what it's really lacking. I mean, it has an awful pacing throughout the entire film, and some of the dialogue and some of the actors are just I didn't care too much for that. Could have been a really entertaining and cool little film. Still, I mean, I don't hate this. I still think it's an all right film, but not a film that I would just say watch it right away. So if that makes any sense. So yeah, Howling 4 at number 6. At number 5, we have Howling 6, which is called The Freaks. And this is kind of I've not seen the film myself yet, but this kind of reminded me of Freaks, the film from the 30s, or like at least it just has that type of feeling, like it's about these circles going around. Um, and I think there's a bunch of werewolves in this, like in the circus, whatever. So it was a while since I saw this one, but I remember I liked some bits of it and I didn't like some. So I mean, this is kind of a mishmash of a film to begin with. Um, let's see, I completely forgot about some of these because I've actually written down some titles underneath each and every film in the series. But anyway, Howling 6 at number 5. Yeah, sorry. And then we have Howling. Number 4, we have Howling 3. Now, this one I think most people would put much lower on the list. But hear me out on this. This is a film that I have sort of like a love-hate relationship with. I mean, if you like the first one, this is really like a punch in the face. But this film is so extremely weird and so odd that I just can't say anything else that I like it. I mean, come on, it has werewolf nuns or whatever in it. I mean, how often do you see that? So this has some really funny and so bad it's good type of moments in it. That's what I wanted to say. Definitely one of my favorite one of those type of films in general. So yeah, this is pretty much like a guilty pleasure for me, really. So I mean, Howling 3, pretty fun, pretty bad, but it's a so bad it's good type of deal. Speaking of so bad it's good, the next one is definitely one of the better ones in that category as well. At number 3 we have Howling 2. Your sister is a werewolf, and I think it's also known as werewolf bitch or something. I'm not sure, steer, but she werewolf bitch or something. But the reason why I like this a little bit better than Howling 3 is because of the cast, because this is definitely a so bad it's good type of deal. It has Christopher Lee being I mean, Christopher Lee looks like he doesn't really know what he's doing there. Red Brown shouting and screaming all over the place, and Sybil Danning looking really sexy and hot in this, which is always a plus. But this one, it's so many. I mean, the werewolves themselves looks more like, I think they look more like apes or something. I mean, the look of the werewolves looks really weird and strange, and the soundtrack is really funny and hilarious as well. If you've seen the first one and you are curious about this one, don't expect it to be any better or as good as the first one, because this feels almost more like a parody than anything else. But Howling 2, really entertaining, so bad it's good, schlock cheesiness. So yeah, at number 3. And then we have at number 2, Howling 5 Rebirth. Now this one I was so glad I found on DVD, because I remember I ordered this from Disc Shop back in the day, and right after that, I think almost straight after I like ordered it, it just went out of print. And I think this is one of the very few occasions where you could there were very few like releases of the film. It might be included in some box set or something, but now that aside, I'm gonna talk about the film. This film I really enjoyed because it kind of has a slasher type vibes to it, because it's basically about this group of people. They go to this isolated like castle in the middle of nowhere. I think it's supposed to be somewhere in like Transylvania or something. And it's sort of like one of those like Agatha Christie flicks or Agatha Christie storylines. It's basically someone's a werewolf, but who's the werewolf? And the action sequences and the blood and gore effects were really, really amazing for a low budget film. And I kept guessing who the werewolf was, and the whole mystery to that. It has like a slasher type feel to it, and that's why I like it so much, because slasher is like my favorite subgenre in the horror genre in general. So yeah, Howling 5 Rebirth, highly recommended if you ever can find this film. I know it's not pretty not so easy to find nowadays, but if you find this for a cheap price, go ahead and give it a watch. I think you won't be disappointed. So yeah, Howling 5 Reborn. No, not Reborn, Rebirth, sorry. And of course, at number 1 comes as no surprise, really, the first Howling film. Yeah, really cool cover as well. I think I also have this on Blu-ray, by the way, so but I put out the DVD because that was the closest that I could get a hold of. Now I have to say that this is maybe not my favorite werewolf film, because my very favorite werewolf film has to be Dog Soldiers. And an American Werewolf in London, I think, is slightly better than this. But if you don't count those two, this is definitely one of the best werewolf films out there, along with those two. And also, I would say Bad Moon is another one which I can really highly recommend. Ginger Snaps as well. And I can just keep on around mumbling here about werewolf films, but this one is definitely one of the best ones. And it is, I mean, it's sort of like a interesting thing, because the first time I watched this, I didn't care too much for it, because the previous film I watched before this was The Shawshank Redemption. And you can imagine watching a really great film like this and just go to a horror film right after that. So I was not really in my right mind when I watched it, so I rewatched it. I've rewatched it numerous of times after that, and every time I watch it, I like it a little bit more. So yeah, and great transformation sequences as well, and the setting and everything. Oh, so atmospheric. I love it. So yeah, Howling 1 at number 1 spot. So yeah. So that's my ranking of the Howling franchise. Now, the first two I mentioned, Howling Reborn and Howling New Moon Rising, I don't have on DVD. I was thinking of picking up like Howling New Moon Rising just for the sake of it, but then I found out that it's like a long gone, out of print title that goes for like $50 or something, and I'm like, no way I'm paying that much money for a piece of garbage like that. I mean, if I would have found it for like $1 or $2, sure, but not $50. Well, anyway, that's it for the video. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, keep your eyes open for the next video, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.